The small lamp on the bedside table glowed softly, casting long shadows across the room. The quiet felt heavy, like it was pressing down on June, making it hard to breathe. Her brown eyes, once full of hope and happiness, now looked empty, like they had forgotten how to shine. Her delicate fingers touched the smooth, cold surface of the vanity table. She was searching for something, anything that could make her feel real again in a life that felt like a never-ending empty dream. 2 years. 2 years of being married, but it had never been real. 2 years of silence, fake smiles in front of others, and sleeping alone in a bed meant for two. 2 years of being called a wife, but never really being loved. Preston Ellington, her husband, had never truly wanted her. Not in the way a husband should want his wife. Not in the way June had dreamed of being wanted. She had married him young, full of hope and trust, believing in love and fairy tales, believing that a wedding ring meant a happy life. But reality had been very different. As soon as the wedding was over, Preston's coldness had appeared. He never held her hand, never touched her, never whispered kind words in the quiet of the night. Any love that might have been there disappeared before it could even grow. June had spent every night alone, waiting for him to look at her, to notice her, to want her. But he never did. Her fingers trembled as they clutched the soft fabric of her nightgown. She had tried to be patient. She had tried to be the perfect wife. She had hoped one day he would hug her, kiss her, and desire her. But that day never came. Her bed stayed untouched, just like it had on their wedding night. She had whispered silent prayers there, asking why she wasn't enough, why she wasn't loved. Preston never said it with words, but his cold looks and sharp, distant words made it clear. You're just my wife on paper, June. Don't expect more. Those words haunted her. She realized now that this wasn't a marriage. It was like being in prison. She tried to make Preston love her, tried to change herself, but it didn't matter. She was invisible to him. And now she was tired. Tired of waiting. Tired of hoping. Tired of being unloved. A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows. June hugged herself, staring at her reflection. She felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Anger. Why had she let this happen? Why had she trapped herself in a loveless marriage? 2 years of her life had been wasted. Then a name came into her mind, almost like a whisper. Orion Blackwood. Her breath caught. Her fingers gripped the edge of the vanity table. Orion Blackwood, Preston's biggest business rival, was a man full of power, wealth, and charm. He had always looked at her in a way Preston never had. He was confident, strong, and honest about wanting her. Unlike Preston, he had never hidden his desire. Her heart raced. She had always noticed his eyes on her, intense, burning, full of something she couldn't name. At first, it made her nervous. But over time, she began to want that attention because for the first time she felt seen. Unlike Preston, who treated her like a ghost, Orion looked at her as if she was something precious, something he wanted to hold. June shook her fists, trying to push the thought away. She couldn't think about him, not while she was still married. And yet, deep down, she knew the truth. She wanted to be wanted. She wanted someone to love her, to crave her, to touch her. She wanted passion, fire, and happiness. She wanted to feel alive. A sudden knock on the bedroom door made her jump. Her heart pounded as she turned, hoping it might be Preston. But she knew better. She had stopped expecting him long ago. She stayed frozen, thinking about her life, a life without love, a husband who didn't care, a bed that had never been shared. But soon everything would change. Orion Blackwood would come into her life, and she would never be untouched again. Orion Blackwood sat in his office, staring at the city lights, but his mind was not on the city. It was on one person, June Ellington. 2 years ago, he had watched her walk down the aisle, knowing she was marrying another man. 2 years of keeping his feelings hidden, pretending he didn't care, but he had wanted her more than anything. He had watched from afar, fighting the desire he felt for her. He had been patient, respectful, and disciplined. Now, he knew the truth. June wasn't loved. She wasn't cherished, she was untouched, and she was still within his reach. The thought made him feel a fierce possessiveness. Preston, who was married to June, had never touched her, never wanted her, never made her feel loved. Orion had controlled his desire for 2 years, but now he couldn't wait any longer. Orion leaned back in his chair, remembering the first time he saw her. It was at a fancy charity event filled with rich people who all tried to look perfect. But June was different. She was real. She was simple but elegant, glowing even among the city's most powerful people. Her laugh had been soft and sweet, wrapping around him like a spell. Orion had everything: money, power, women who wanted him, but he had never wanted anyone like he wanted June. He had tried to meet her that night, but Preston appeared. June turned to Preston with trust and warmth, and Orion felt a bitter pain. He had walked away, forcing himself to accept that she was not his. But now, 2 years later, he knew she had chosen wrong. Preston had ignored her. He had left her lonely, starved for love. Orion would never do that. He would make her feel wanted, desired, cherished. Orion stood up, putting on his suit jacket. Inside, he was not calm. He was a storm, ready to claim what was his. He told his assistant to cancel all his meetings. Nothing mattered anymore except June. June had tried to be patient. She had been taught that marriage was sacred, that love could grow even in a cold home. She had hoped her kindness would soften Preston's heart. But after 2 years of lying awake beside him, feeling invisible, she had lost hope. Then one evening, everything changed. Preston had left his phone on the kitchen counter, something he never did. June felt a strange urge to look at it. Her fingers shook as she picked it up. The screen lit up, showing dozens of unread messages from people she didn't know. Her stomach turned. The messages were clear. "Last night was incredible. I miss your touch. When can I see you again? Don't tell your wife." Her hands shook. Her eyes blurred with tears. Preston had been cheating, over and over, without regret. Now she understood the coldness, the late nights, the way he had recoiled from her touch. He had never wanted her. Not once. The phone slipped from her fingers and hit the counter. Her heart pounded as she turned. Preston walked in, looking at her with a blank expression, as if she was nothing to him. "Why are you standing there like that?" he asked, his voice cold. June lifted her chin, her hands clenched into fists. "How could you?" she asked, her voice shaking but strong. She would not crumble in front of him. She was furious, not just heartbroken, but angry. Preston smirked. "How could I? What do you mean?" He didn't even try to hide himself. He didn't care. June's chest tightened. "I saw your phone, Preston. I saw everything." The words were bitter, but she forced them out. She would no longer be ignored, unloved, or unseen. Instead of feeling guilty or sorry, Preston just laughed. His laugh sounded empty and mean. June's nails dug into her palms, and her whole body shook. "You lied to me. You tricked me," she whispered. Preston shook his head like she was a silly little girl. "Did you really think I married you because I loved you?" he asked. Those words hit her harder than a slap. Her chest felt tight, and it was like the ground disappeared beneath her feet. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. Preston rolled his eyes, looking bored. "You were just an easy choice, June. Pretty, obedient, and convenient." His words cut her heart like a sharp knife. She had spent 2 whole years trying to be a good wife. She had hoped he would love her, but all this time she had been just convenient. Tears burned in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing her cry. "Then why marry me at all?" she asked quietly, but her voice was strong, even though she felt crushed inside. Preston ran a hand through his perfect hair and scoffed. "Because my father wanted me to. Marrying you made him happy and kept my inheritance safe. But you are nothing to me, June. Nothing." June took a sharp breath. Her whole body felt numb. She had always known Preston didn't love her, but she had never imagined he could be this cruel. She had been married to him for 2 years, and now she realized she had never truly known him. Something inside her changed. The tears she had tried to hold back didn't fall, but the pain inside her started to turn into something else. Something strong, something fierce. She had spent too long in a marriage without love, too long waiting for a man who had never wanted her. But she decided she wouldn't waste another second. That night, as she packed her bags, she made a choice. She would leave him, and she would never let any man make her feel unwanted again. The divorce was fast. There were no long, painful fights. Preston didn't beg her to stay. He signed the papers as if they were just another piece of paper in his business, barely looking at her. It was like she had been a small, unimportant chapter in his life, and now he wanted to close the book. No guilt, no sadness, just a cold, empty smile as he handed the papers back. June realized something important then. The love she had hoped for in her marriage had never existed, not even for a second. Inside her, there was no heartbreak left, only a deep emptiness. She finally understood she had spent years fighting for something that was never real. When she stepped out of the courthouse, it felt like a heavy weight had lifted from her shoulders, but instead of feeling happy, there was only silence inside her. She was free, yes, but free to do what? For so long, her life had been controlled by someone else. Now she had no rules, no orders, no one telling her what to do. The freedom was scary, but also exciting. The apartment she moved into was small and simple, nothing like the huge, cold mansion she had lived in with Preston. But it was hers. Every chair, every table, every little thing was chosen by her. It was a symbol of her new life, a life that was finally her own. Even with this new independence, she felt lost. Her apartment was quiet, too quiet. The emptiness reminded her of the last 2 years with Preston. Those years had taken every bit of warmth from her heart. June spent her days looking for jobs. She searched online, sent applications, went to interviews. And at night, she lay awake in her bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she had made a mistake. Was being alone better than living with Preston's coldness? The answer should have been simple, but fear and doubt crept into her mind like shadows, whispering that maybe she had chosen wrong. Then, just when she felt like she might drown in uncertainty, he appeared. Orion Blackwood. The first time she saw him after the divorce was at a quiet cafe in the city. She was sitting alone by the window, stirring her coffee, lost in her thoughts, when a shadow fell across her table. She looked up and saw him. He was tall and strong, with dark eyes that seemed to see right through her. Orion Blackwood was a name she had only heard in business circles. People respected him, but also feared him. He was smart, powerful, and not someone to take lightly. Now, all of that focus, all of that power was on her. "I heard about the divorce," he said in a deep, calm voice. It sounded smooth, but had something she couldn't read. June's heart skipped a beat. She had known of Orion for years. She had seen him at parties, always watching, but he had never approached her. And now here he was, sitting across from her, staring at her like he had been waiting for this moment. "News travels fast, I guess," she said softly, trying not to show how nervous she was. Orion wasn't there for small talk. He studied her, his eyes searching hers like he could see all the battles inside her. Then, without warning, he said, "Come work for me, June." She blinked, surprised. "Work? For you?" she asked. Her voice shook a little. Orion nodded, leaning back in his chair. He looked calm, but the way he stared at her made her heart beat faster. It felt different. Dangerous. "You need a job. I need someone I can trust. It makes sense," he said. June hesitated. She had been looking for work, sending applications, preparing for interviews, but this offer felt different. Something about Orion made her feel both scared and excited. "I don't need saving," she said carefully, watching his face for pity. Orion smiled slightly, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was darker. "Maybe not, but you need someone who actually sees you," he said. Something changed in the air between them. It was electric. June's heart beat fast. He was close, powerful, and for the first time in her life, she felt truly seen. Orion didn't give her pity. He didn't offer fake kindness, he offered something more. And for the first time, June wasn't invisible. Orion saw her, and he wouldn't let her go. Working with Orion was unlike anything June had ever experienced. From her first day in his towering office building, she could feel it. He wasn't just a boss, he was a force. When he walked into a room, everyone noticed, and when his eyes found hers, her heart skipped. There was something deliberate in his gaze, something that made her pulse quicken. He didn't just look at her, he saw her. Every glance carried an unspoken promise, a quiet storm that made her both nervous and alive. June wasn't used to feeling wanted in that way. After years of silence and distance in her marriage, Orion's attention felt dangerous, like standing too close to a fire. At first, she told herself she was imagining it. Maybe she was reading too much into the way his eyes lingered, or how his voice softened when he spoke to her. But then she began to notice the little things. The way he stood too near when they worked late, how his hand brushed hers when passing papers, and how his expression changed when someone else tried to make her laugh. Orion Blackwood was a man who controlled everything, yet around her that control seemed to falter. For the first time, she could see the emotion behind his calm surface. And it scared her, because she felt it too. The pull, the heat, the unspoken longing neither of them dared name. One quiet evening, everything changed. The office was nearly empty, the city humming faintly outside. June sat at her desk, finishing her work, when she felt it, his presence behind her, steady and magnetic. Then his voice broke the silence. "If I were your husband," he said quietly, "I'd never have let you feel invisible." June froze. Slowly, she turned to him, meeting his dark, unreadable eyes. The words hung in the air between them, soft, dangerous, and real. "Orion," she began, but he stepped closer. She could feel his warmth, the closeness of someone who had been holding back for far too long. "Say my name again," he murmured. His tone was low, unsteady, almost pleading. Her lips parted, but she couldn't speak. The moment stretched, filled with everything they'd been denying. She knew she should step away, remind herself it was wrong, but she couldn't. When his hand reached out to gently touch her wrist, it wasn't just a gesture. It was a question, a silent moment of truth. Their eyes locked, and she could see the conflict in his face, the desire, the restraint, the ache. The air between them seemed to hum with emotion. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then, in one quiet, breathless moment, the wall between them finally broke. Orion's hand moved to her cheek, and June didn't pull away. Her breath trembled, and she closed her eyes, knowing that nothing between them would ever be the same again. A quiet gasp escaped her as he pulled her closer, pressing her gently against the cool elevator doors. His touch was firm but careful, as if he was afraid she might slip away. Her thoughts blurred until there was nothing but him, the warmth of his hands, the nearness of his breath, and the way he looked at her like she was something rare and irreplaceable. Her fingers clutched his shirt as he kissed her softly, deeply, like every second mattered. She had never been kissed this way before, not with such care, such need, such honesty. Preston had never made her feel like she mattered, but Orion did. And that scared her, because this wasn't just a kiss, it felt like a promise. When he led her to his penthouse, she felt a strange sense of belonging, as if the space itself had been waiting for her. The city lights shimmered through the tall windows, casting golden reflections across the room, but her attention was on him, on the quiet strength in his eyes and the way his voice trembled when he spoke. "Are you sure?" he asked softly, his voice low but full of feeling. His question wasn't about doubt, it was about care, about wanting her to choose freely. She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "I've never been more sure." That was all he needed. He drew her into his arms again, holding her close, letting the silence between them speak. The world outside faded away. No noise, no distance, no fear. Just the two of them, hearts racing in rhythm. That night wasn't about control or desire. It was about connection, about two people who had been hurt learning how to feel again. He touched her hand, her cheek, her heart, as though each gesture carried a promise of something lasting. Every word he spoke made her believe she was seen, understood, and wanted for who she truly was. When morning came, she woke to find him watching her quietly. His gaze wasn't demanding, it was protective, filled with a kind of fierce tenderness she hadn't known before. "You're mine now, June," he said softly, not as a command but as a vow. "No one else could ever see you the way I do." Her heart raced. The heat of his words made her feel wild and reckless, something she had never felt before. "I'm yours," she whispered. The moment she said it, he moved closer with desperate hunger. His hands gripped her hips, pulling her nearer, his lips finding hers again. Fire ran through her veins. There was no hesitation, only need, only him. When he kissed her again, it wasn't just desire, it was a promise. He was claiming her heart, making sure no one could ever take her place. He adored her with every touch, every whisper, until she was gasping his name, until there was nothing left of her but him. When it was over, he didn't let go. He held her close, brushing her temple with his lips, breathing warm against her skin. "I don't share, June." "I never will," he whispered. She shivered, because she knew he meant it. Orion Blackwood didn't love softly. He consumed, he owned, he claimed, and he never let go. As she lay in his arms, feeling his steady heartbeat, she realized something scary. She didn't want him to let her go. Preston, her ex, had always believed he could leave without regret, but seeing June with another man, with Orion, made something burn inside him. Jealousy. Raw and hot. He had never felt it before. When they were married, he took her for granted. He believed she would always be there, always be his. But now, she wasn't. She was with Orion Sinclair, a man who looked at her with quiet possessiveness that made Preston angry. "You moved on too fast," Preston said mockingly, stepping closer, his arms crossed. He hated the words as soon as they left his mouth. June stiffened, her fingers clutching her dress. Orion didn't react, except that his jaw tightened and his dark eyes turned cold as steel, looking at Preston. "She's none of your concern," Orion said calmly, but there was a warning under his words. Preston smirked, sensing the possessiveness. "Does he know, June?" he said. His voice was teasing, but his eyes were sharp. "Does he know you were a virgin when we divorced?" June turned pale, her breath catching. The air felt heavy with tension. She glanced at Orion, unsure how he would react. Would he care? Would he judge her past? Orion didn't react the way June had been afraid he would. He didn't look confused or upset. Instead, a small, confident smile appeared on his face. His eyes met Preston's, and he looked calm, strong, and certain. Then he said something that made June's heart skip a beat. "That just means she was always meant to be mine," Orion said quietly, his voice calm and sure. Preston's smile faded. He had wanted to make Orion feel jealous or uncertain, to make him doubt June. But Orion wasn't afraid. He looked at June like she was the most special person in the world, like her past only made him want her more. Before Preston could say anything, Orion moved. In one quick motion, he grabbed June's waist and pulled her close. He kissed her. Not a gentle kiss. A deep, strong kiss that made June forget to breathe. The world around them disappeared. The only thing she could feel was Orion. His hands were firm, his lips certain, his presence overwhelming. The kiss was more than just showing Preston he was serious. It was a promise. Orion was telling June and everyone watching that she was his. Only his. June's hands held onto him, her body melting into his. She had never been kissed like this before. She had never felt one so needed, so loved. Preston, standing nearby, clenched his fists. He wanted to look away, but he couldn't. The jealousy he felt twisted into something painful. He had never kissed June like Orion had. He had never held her like she was the most important person in the world. Now someone else did. Orion pulled back just a little and rested his forehead against hers. "You're mine, June. No one else matters," he whispered. June's heart raced. Her hands trembled as she held on to him. She didn't feel embarrassed. She didn't care who saw. All that mattered was the man in front of her, the man who had erased all her doubts with just one kiss. Orion looked back at Preston, calm and confident. "Walk away, Preston. You lost her, and I won't let you forget it." Preston stared for a long moment. His jaw was tight. His eyes were dark, full of hurt. Then, without saying a word, he turned and walked away. The pain of losing her stayed with him. Orion had always known what he wanted, and what he wanted more than anything was June. She wasn't just a fleeting love. She wasn't just someone who came and went. She was the one thing he had always dreamed of, the one thing he didn't even know he needed until she was back in his life. June sat on the balcony, knees pulled to her chest, hair blowing softly in the wind. She looked at the city lights, golden and bright, and felt peaceful. Orion made her feel safe. He made her forget the painful past that had haunted her for so long. But could she truly belong to him? Could she love him completely, without fear? Orion stepped behind her, wrapping his strong arms around her shoulders. He kissed the top of her head. "You're thinking too much," he said softly, his voice warm and gentle. June let out a soft laugh and pressed her head against his chest. "Maybe," she admitted. Orion gently lifted her, turning her to face him. His eyes were dark, intense, and full of love. He took her hands in his, holding them tightly. "June," he said, softer now, serious and steady, "marry me." June's heart raced. Her mouth opened, but she couldn't find the words. Orion didn't let her speak. He held her hands even tighter. "I won't lose you, June. Not to your past, not to your fears. I want all of you, your love, your laughter, your pain. I want to hold you when you're scared. I want to kiss away your tears. I want all of you, forever." Tears came to June's eyes. Her heart overflowed with feelings too big to hold. This wasn't just a proposal. It was everything. It was Orion saying he loved her more than anything in the world. He had waited for her, only for her. June had spent so long running from love, afraid she wasn't enough. But Orion had erased all her doubts, all her fears. She wanted forever, too. She wanted it with him. Now, she stood in her bridal suite, looking at herself in the mirror. Her heart beat fast. Her hands shook slightly as she held the lace of her wedding dress. The gown was beautiful, but what made it perfect wasn't the fabric or the pearls. It was what it meant, a new start, a life chosen with love. She had been here before, in another life, where love had been hard, where duty and rules had controlled her. But this time was different. She was marrying because she wanted to. Because she loved Orion Sinclair with every heartbeat, every breath, every part of her soul. The room was full of excitement. Bridesmaids and family whispered and moved around her, but June barely noticed. She only thought of him, Orion, waiting for her at the altar. The man who had shown her what real love was. Orion had never given up on her, even when she was scared. He had claimed her with kisses, with gentle touches, with promises whispered before today. Today, though, today would make it real forever. Looking at herself in the mirror, June finally saw a happy woman, not just someone surviving life, not just content, but truly, deeply happy. Love had done that. Orion had done that. A soft knock on the door brought her out of her thoughts. Her best friend smiled at her, eyes shining with tears. "It's time," she whispered. June took a deep breath, pressed her hand to her heart, and nodded. She turned, looking one last time at the room and her old life before stepping toward her future. Walking down the aisle felt like a dream. Every step brought her closer to Orion. The doors opened and the guests fell silent. Then she saw him. Orion, standing at the altar, strong and perfect, but it wasn't his suit that made her stop. It was the way he looked at her. He looked at her like she was everything, like the world had stopped the moment she entered. His eyes were full of love, fierce and true. June held her bouquet tighter and quickened her steps toward him. He reached out, taking her hand. Warmth spread through her as he held her. "You're breathtaking," he whispered. The ceremony passed in a blur, but one moment stayed in June's heart forever. The kiss. Orion held her face gently, his thumb brushing her cheek. Then he kissed her, deeply, fully, with all the love in his heart. It wasn't just passion, it was a promise, a vow, a way to tell her she would never feel unloved again. Orion had always been intense. He never did anything halfway, and with June, his love and need for her were stronger than ever. She was his everything. Now she was his wife. He had made it official, and he would never let their love fade. That night, in their honeymoon suite, the room glowed with candlelight. The air smelled of roses, the waves softly crashing outside. Orion wanted this night to be just about them, no one else. June stood by the window. Moonlight made her glow. Orion's eyes followed her, his wife, his love, his obsession. He walked slowly toward her, his eyes never leaving hers. His hands touched her arm, sending shivers through her. "You're mine," he said softly, his voice rough but full of love, "and I'll spend every night for the rest of our lives proving it." Before she could speak, he kissed her again. This kiss was worshipful, full of hunger and love. He lifted her, carrying her to the bed without breaking the kiss. And when he lay over her, holding her close, June knew for sure Orion Sinclair would never stop loving her. Their marriage wasn't just a wedding. It was a lifetime of love, passion, and care. He had promised to love her, and he kept that promise every single day. From the moment he put the ring on her finger, June never doubted her worth again. Orion Sinclair made sure she knew every day just how much she meant to him. Their days were full of happiness. They laughed together, shared little kisses in the morning sunlight, and whispered sweet words to each other at night. No matter how busy Orion was, no matter how many important things he had to do as a CEO, he always made time for June. She was his most important person. Orion loved her with all his heart. He showed his love in every little thing. When June moved in her sleep, he gently pulled her closer. In a crowded room, his hand always found hers. And the way he looked at her, it was like she was the most important thing in the world, like she was the air he breathed. June grew happier and stronger with his love. The woman who had once doubted herself, who sometimes wondered if she was good enough, now knew she was everything to him. And she believed it. Their home was warm and full of love. They spent nights wrapped in each other's arms and mornings where Orion would not let June get out of bed because he wanted just a few more minutes holding her. He loved her not just in big romantic moments, but in small, everyday things too. He made her coffee exactly the way she liked it. He remembered every little thing that made her smile. He made sure she never doubted how deeply he loved her, how much he adored her every single day. Years went by, but their love never faded. If anything, it grew stronger. With Orion, love didn't get weaker with time. It became brighter and more powerful, and June had never been more sure of anything in her life. Orion always told her she belonged to him. From the moment he loved her completely, from the moment he pulled her into his world with a love so strong, it felt like the universe had planned their lives together long before they even met. Now, as June lay in his arms, surrounded by the warmth of their love and the life they had built, she knew he had been right. She had always been meant for him, even before she realized it herself. She could feel the truth in the way he held her, his arms wrapped around her like he would never let her go. He breathed her in, kissed her hair gently, and his fingers moved slowly across her skin, tracing it with love even after all these years. He still looked at her with wonder, with desire, with a love so strong it took her breath away. There had never been anyone else for him. There never would be. Outside, the world was quiet. The soft city lights shone through the windows, casting golden shadows over them. The night was calm, but inside, in Orion's arms, everything felt alive. Their love had never gone away. It never weakened. Time only made it stronger, more powerful, and more undeniable. There was nothing in the world Orion would not do for June. No distance too far, no challenge too big if it meant keeping her safe, happy, and always his. Orion had built a huge business and had won many battles in life, but June was his greatest treasure, his most important victory, the one thing he had always needed. As she rested her head on his chest, feeling his steady heartbeat, she traced her fingers over him, remembering every inch as if she hadn't already 1,000 times. She felt his muscles tense under her touch, his breath quicken, and it gave her shivers because, even after all this time, she still affected him just like the first night they met. "You were always meant to be mine, sweetheart," Orion whispered. His voice was full of certainty. His lips brushed her temple, and he held her just a little tighter. There was something protective and loving in the way he said it, because it was true. She had always been meant for him, just like he had always been meant for her. No one and nothing could ever change that. June closed her eyes and let his words sink deep into her heart. She had spent so long trying to find where she truly belonged, a place that felt like home. Now she understood. Home was not a house or a city or even the life they had built together. Home was Orion. Orion Sinclair was her heart, her safe place, her forever. And as she lay there in his arms, the arms of the only man she would ever love, she knew she had never been more certain of anything in her life.